Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of our Q&A, where we sit around in our orange chairs, answer questions that are burning through your minds.
Oh, no.
This week's going to be a little bit different, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. Dave, it's been a few weeks since
It's been a few weeks. Our schedules have been so weird, we haven't been able to sit down and do this.
Nope. And sometimes that's just how it is. Sometimes summer hits and things get a little chaotic.
Get crazy. Yep, they get crazy.
Yeah, how you been?
I've been well, thank you. Hard to believe summer's like halfway over halfway over.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about that the other day. I haven't even gotten to the beach yet. Like, I haven't even gone to the, normal. I love going. I love going to the beach. I love going to the water. Like, that is just a good, happy place for me. But sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Doesn't work out. You need to get away, man. You don't get away enough.
That's all right. We got stuff to do. We are burning
that's
stuff
why you
to
don't
do.
get away as much as you should, Steve.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'll plan something eventually. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. We here at Connections One, we are not afraid of your questions. We love your questions. We love you challenging us, hearing our messages and asking those tough questions about what you're hearing, what you might be reading through in the Bible. These are the burning questions that you guys have, and we love being able to sit down and answer all of those. And we would encourage you to continue submitting your questions. You can do that at my3c.org and click on Ask a Question. Now, all of those questions are anonymous. We don't know who asks them. So we do this for a couple of reasons. One, we do it so it removes any sense of fear of retaliation or judgment or anything that might be holding you back from asking those questions. Because we know sometimes, especially around faith-based questions, if you ask the question, people might judge you hard. It's just what we've experienced. It's what we've seen.
Absolutely.
And we want to remove that obstacle from you so you can ask the really difficult questions. We also do it so when we receive the questions, we're not prejudging based off of a relationship we might have with a person asking those questions. So we do appreciate all the questions you guys have been submitting. If you need to reach out to us and you want a response directly from us about something specific, please fill out one of our Connect cards. That's the best way to get a hold of us and to get a direct response. But if you just have a question you would love to submit to our Q&A, Ask a Question is the best way to do it. And Dave, we are in a pretty unique time period for our church right now. We have a lot of good things moving forward. We've got, our Imagine More building campaign with the vision of building a new auditorium and lobby and expanding our children's area here in the current facility. We've seen this church just radically change from Prairie Chapel and meeting in schools to buying this property.
Some people have heard Prairie Chapel for the first time just now.
I know. Yeah. So if you didn't know, Connections Community Church used to be called the Prairie Chapel. But we've also hit a milestone right here this summer, which we briefly acknowledged and celebrated on a couple weeks ago. But that's your 25th anniversary right here at Connection. So first off, we want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks for sticking around, and I'm sure it has not been always easy, and we're going to get into some of that this evening. But just being faithful to the church here and to this area and committing your life to serving the people of Schoolcraft, Portage, Kalamazoo, the surrounding areas. Man, what a blessing it has been to watch you and to be under your leadership, and then to continue to see where God is going to lead you in the future.
Yeah, thank you.
But we had some questions that came in about...
Yeah, I thought that was so weird. But...
About you. So today, is going to be the Dave Sanders show. It is going to be asking you questions about your ministry, about your time here, about your history, about everything surrounding it, some of the challenges you faced. So we have some great questions that came in. So we would love for you to put it in the comments right now. If you have more questions for Dave Sanders, put it in the comments. We'll try to get him to answer even more. But we're gonna ask some of these questions, and we're gonna see what you have to say.
All right, sounds good. Sounds
find
good.
This first question. Here we go. All right, Dave. What has changed the most during the 25 years you have been pastoring at Connections?
Wow. Yeah. I'm going to some pretty big cultural things that inevitably impact life and ministry for everybody. The biggest changes, one, it's got to be the proliferation of available information on the World Wide Web. The accessibility to anything you want has so radically changed people, culture, and the way church has done. You know, it was like there was a time, even 25 years ago, when certainly there was still the World Wide Web, but not as many people were using it, that were leaning on it. It wasn't their go-to source for information, particularly spiritual information. You still went to a church somewhere. Well, because of the proliferation of available information, people now are much more likely to go and try to get an answer to their spiritual questions on the internet. It's not like, I'm going to go to church. I got some spiritual questions. Like, I'm just going to search it. I'm going to search it on Google, right? I'm going to go to YouTube, find a video to get the information. And that has really amped up the challenge factor when it comes to being a local church. People don't need, and often don't even think about coming to church to get their spiritual answers. And so a couple of notes about that that occur to me off the top of my head that are pretty relevant. One is that the need to develop discernment it's always been great, and now it is exponentially greater. Because I'm sure everybody in our audience, anybody listening knows, if you want to find somebody to just agree with you, that's a piece of cake. I can find somebody that will support my position on anything. I can find my community there. So the need to be able to discern, to sift through information, not even what's right and wrong, but what's relevant and what's not. That's a real challenge for people now, is to become discerning. Another thing is that there's something that cannot be experienced unless it's being experienced in actual community with other people. And so there's an isolation. There's a growing loneliness, I think, that exists in our culture because we don't need to go to community to find out stuff. We don't know how to work together in community, maybe where there's disagreements or there's edges. So that's changed things a lot. We've chosen at Connections, by the way, to embrace the virtual world, the digital world, and to go, we're going to have a presence on it. We want to be someplace people can go to find spiritual information. So we haven't chosen the withdrawal route, but we've chosen the engagement route. Let's use this as a tool and to try to compete with all the other voices by bringing what we believe is the true voice of God to people that are searching for answers. So that's been one huge, huge change that we could talk about for a long time, no doubt.
Just staying on that for just a second, give us a little bit of a history or a rundown of how when you saw that change starting to happen culturally, when did the church start to adopt and really embrace, and where did you see that as? Did you fight that? Did you fight those tensions as a senior pastor?
Yeah.
And at what point did we collectively as a church just say, you know what, let's embrace it instead of combat it?
Great question. And the answer to that would be right about 2003, after being here for about 3 years, because we had gone through just enough growth that there was a desire to build a building out in the country, because there was some property the church owned at the time out in the country. And I took some time to be able to do a deep dive into cultural trends, thinking that it might impact what and how we might build something. And in doing that, I was impressed upon the need to switch is the wrong word, to add a digital virtual component to what we're doing as a church, because that's where our culture was moving more and more. This would have been about 2003. It was at that point that it was like we developed a website. Our first web developer was me. So you can imagine the awesomeness of our first website incarnations.
Was it a GeoCities webpage?
It was not a GeoCities, but it was one of those, like, for $100 a year, you can, get a domain name and you can build your own website. So it looked like somebody like me built a website, but at least we had one. And then learned and everything along the way, for sure. It was then that we also decided we need to have our services online. And so we actually used Vimeo, where we would record it and then render it, and then we would post it on Vimeo so that people could see it that way. And that all began happening right about 2003. And from then, it's only grown significantly. It was enhanced greatly by your arrival, because you had an expertise in this area, and you had a digital expertise, but you also had that creative understanding of how things should be laid out. And so there was a big improvement there. But then when COVID hit and the church was like not meeting, I remember getting together as a staff, even if it was a virtual get together, yep. But we were getting together and we're going, okay, look, we have still got to be the church. And if we can't gather, we have to find a way to both build community, but also to provide that worship experience for people in a much more qualitative way. And so we made a financial and time investment at that point, which I believe is still paying off huge dividends as we've moved. That's when we basically said, no, we're going to compete. We're going to be as good as we can be in that arena so we can be a go-to resource for people. This studio is an outgrowth of decisions that we made back then. So that's kind of been the evolution of how things have gone in that regard.
Yeah, we made a very conscious decision to say the way people will consume church is changing.
Yep, that's right.
And we also know that now that we're 5 years removed from the COVID pandemic, as people go and start exploring new church options, one of the first things they do is check out our digital footprint.
That's exactly right.
And to be able to have something that is provided that is high quality is greatly important.
It is greatly important. It is the new front door to the church, because people will explore things digitally first to see whether or not they want to make an actual visit. The vast majority of people still do that. What has also been added to that is so important is our whole social media aspect. And we even had a consultant who was doing a graduate project, came in and worked with us a little bit. And the biggest takeaway from that is that social media needs to be used to show the personality of a church, not like some digital advertising or announcement board, which most churches use it as. So we embrace that notion and use our social media for way more than informing. In fact, informing is almost secondary to like, here's who we are. This is our personality. This is what we're like, get a feel for us. And that too has made a huge difference in our presence online for people.
Yeah, for sure.
So the digital world has been one of the biggest changes by far. Another, Steve, has been the maturation of the postmodern experiment. And I know this sounds so esoteric or it sounds so like philosophical, but the biggest thing about postmodernism is that there is no such thing as absolute truth. And that has trickled down from the halls of the intellectually elite to the place now that it's commonplace in culture. What's true for you may not be true for me. We all need to discover our own truth. And that has infiltrated the church. And when you tie that to the proliferation of spiritual information on the internet, I'll just watch a church that is in line with what is closer to my view of truth, and I'm going to go that direction. And so to actually disciple people into the absolute unchanging truth taught by the unchanging Jesus becomes much more challenging. And so that has been a major change. We have been forced to look at what we do as a church on Sunday morning worship service and go, are we creating the kind of experience that is, number one, faithful to God? Because if you're not, it doesn't matter what else you do. Doesn't matter. Irrelevant. But that's faithful to God, but is genuinely perceived as a value add to people who bother to show up. Because if we're not adding value in that real-time practical sense, I'm out of here. I've got other options that I can do. So it's made us become sharper. It's made us become more refined and focused in what we do. And I think that's a good thing.
So on that, if you were to look back at yourself 25 years ago, if somebody were to experience church then compared to now, what would you say they would see as that change? Like, how would you maybe speak different, or how would you maybe approach your messages different? Has there been a change in that? Or
yeah, there has been. There absolutely has been. In several regards. Number one, and do not laugh when I say this because it's really, really true. I don't speak as long. I ask you not to laugh, Steve. Which is still a struggle for me that I get reminded of routinely. But that time spent just going down ancillary pathways because it's cool information has been eliminated to make sure that in that 30-ish minutes, it's more laser focused on what's the big idea of the message. Because the ability to be able to track for a longer period of time has been lost on the parts of many people. And we can either decry that and bemoan it and, wail and lament, or go, all right, we're going to fit into a reasonable time frame, into 30 minutes, a more focused message on a big idea that we really want you to grasp before you go. We also want to make sure that there's less explanation in it and there's more both application, but also there's more emotion. And you use stories and illustrations and metaphors. By the way, the very things Jesus used on a routine basis. Because if we're not helping people to feel something, in addition to understand something, we're really not changing anybody's lives. We're really not. We are mind, body, soul. We're intellectual. We're emotional. We're spiritual. And we try to appeal to the whole human being in the way we craft our services and our communication in both our music as well as in the spoken conveyance of God's word, because we convey God's word in our music as well. Yep. Everything is a communication of God in what we try to do. There's also a difference in that I don't assume even a belief in absolute truth, let alone the Bible as truth when I speak. And that colors the way I say things and present things.
Give us an example of something. Flesh that out a little more.
Okay, so I might start with a principle. And I might even state like something on the order of, here's what I've discovered in my life when it comes to relationships. I've discovered that if and I'm going to near past, if I really want to garner influence in someone's life because I care about them and I want them to move God's direction, I got to make sure I'm building a relationship with that person. Because a relationship is a bridge over which effective influence has the chance to travel. Then I go, it's actually Jesus who taught us that. So now what I'm doing is I'm connecting what I've learned in my experience. And I believe that when I share that, people resonate with that because they're going, you know what? I can see that. I can see how when I've had a relationship, I am more easily persuaded by a person I have a good relationship with. And now I'm taking something that you've experienced and intuitively understand the trueness, and then I connected it to Jesus and that he's the one that actually taught us that. If you lead with, the Bible says this, people that are a little standoffish about the Bible right away are going, oh, skeptical. I don't know that I believe this. I'm having something foisted on me. And so I actually lead with the truth, and then I label where the truth came from.
Gotcha.
And that I have found that with today's audience, with people that are colored by culture, we all are to some degree, but particularly people we're trying to reach and haven't been discipled yet, in a way that they're more likely to embrace what is true than by leading with the Bible tells us that. If I'm dealing with a Christian, I have no problem saying that. And I always get the truth from God's word. Always. That's where we go to. That's what we base everything upon. But I recognize many people don't have that. So I approach it differently because my goal is to persuade them, not alienate them by the way I say the things that I say.
Right.
So that would be an example of that. I would have to say the biggest change, however, in 25 years is me. I am just not the same person. And when I came here, I'd actually pastored 2 other churches. And I thought when I got here, I had learned enough that I could maybe get this one right. And oh my goodness, how I have grown over the years. I have changed so much in what I do. Steve, when I first got here, I was everything from the worship leader. Seriously, I would lead worship on many Sundays. I would oversee the children's ministry. I did the website. I made sure the chairs were straight on Sunday morning in the multipurpose room. I was the youth path. I mean, I did everything. It was a church of 75 people total, men, women, and children included. And over the course of time, I've been able to do less and less and just focus on things that are really more in my wheelhouse, the giftedness God has given me. And the less I do of many things, the better we are as a church. Believe me, we're way better. So what I do is so much different, but right now I would have to say that the two biggest changes in me personally, aside from like how I communicate and that kind of thing we just talked about, is one, I'm a more tolerant person than I was before. And what I mean by that is I am so much more likely to just overlook stuff in people's lives, to not be a nitpicker. Maybe I should put it that way. Because what I've come to understand is that if you just create an environment of love and keep providing a steady diet of truth, people change, Steve. And I think especially today, maybe it's always been true. It's possible this has always been true, and I just couldn't see it, and I just recognize it more in contemporary culture. That if we could just have people around us that believe in us and love us and give us the benefit of the doubt and overlook all the myriad of little crap that we do wrong or the idiosyncrasies, but believe in us and give us an opportunity, it's amazing how we change and grow.
Right.
And so I just find myself way more tolerant, and I just overlook a lot more little stuff. And I don't feel this compulsion to go, I need to correct this. I need to correct that. I'm so glad God didn't deal with me that way. He overlooked and still does so many little things. I love the description of Jesus that says, a smoldering wick he doesn't extinguish, and a bruised reed he doesn't break. It's proverbial statements about how Jesus gently nourishes things that are almost dead and almost extinguished back to flame, back to life. And he did that by being gentle and patient and tolerant. And I hope I'm a little bit more that way than I was. I think I am. And interestingly enough, I've become less tolerant of major doctrinal error now than I was then. It's like there are some things I'm less tolerant about, but in the area of basic fundamental doctrines of the faith, without which you don't really even have Christianity anymore. You have a version of your own making, which means it's not real. And I'm also more patient in some regards. Oh gosh. I'm patient in this regard. I don't feel the compulsion to manufacture an outcome, to make it happen now. I am patient in the sense that I am cool. I have made peace with God's timing. And God, I heard this said one time, and I've said it a million times since then. God operates at two speeds: too fast, too slow. That's how it feels to us human beings. Too fast, too slow, man. And I want to operate at the speed of the Spirit. Before, I always wanted to operate with a sense of urgency about everything. And then I learned that a sense of urgency and a sense of pace are not the same thing. And when you're urgent on something that the Holy Spirit actually wants to take more time to play out, I'm working at odds with the Spirit of Jesus while I'm trying to do the work of Jesus. That never pays off well. So I am way more okay with going, this is the way we need to go. This is what we need to accomplish. But this will be done at the speed of which the Spirit of God works, and I can't force it to happen sooner. So I'm going to take a more patient approach and let it happen in God's time. Those are some huge changes when it comes to me as a person. And I think I've changed more than anything to answer that question.
That's good. It's always good to reflect back on something like 25 years and see how far we've come and see how the world is changing, and to know that 25 years in the future we're going to look back and see how radically different
it
is. So we look forward to the new advances and the new changes moving forward.
We do.
And the continued growth that we have. And I love the fact that you ended with really, you've changed. And what hopefully that conveys to everybody is, one, as pastors of a church, we don't have it all figured out either.
Goodness, that's for sure.
And God is still working and growing and changing our lives.
That's right.
And we will continue to grow. We still need the Spirit working in us. So I think that's just a healthy and a good reminder
that, Steve.
Man, Dave Sanders doesn't always have it all figured out.
Oh my goodness.
God is still helping you grow into the person He wants you to become.
Yep, that's right. I love and take comfort from Paul's words to Timothy when he looked at him. I think it's 1 Timothy chapter 4. And he said, take heed to yourself. Pay attention to yourself and your teaching. Dedicate yourself to both personal growth and your skill in teaching, so that your progress may be evident to all. Paul is going, hey, Timothy, and he was a leader of leaders. He was a leader of pastors. He's going, Timothy, make sure people see you're still changing and growing. You're becoming a better person. You're becoming more like Christ. And if there's an example that we as a pastoral staff want to set, it's an example of we're still growing and changing, man. Yep. We're not going to stop. God's not done working on us, just like He's not done working on you. So let's grow together. And that mindset, man, that gets rid of judgmentalism, and it really puts us in a greater unity, because we're all working hard for the same goal, to become more and more like Jesus.
Yeah. Well, and as we look at the lives of pastors, man, there are so many examples. Some that are great examples, some that are horrible examples, some that fall off, some that feel called into ministry and then get burnt out. Some people fall to temptation. There's so many things that we see our pastors go through. The next question we have is, not many pastors stay at one church for 25 years, which is so true.
It really is.
Because church work can be hard. It can be messy. There can be hurt feelings. A lot of times it is a very mobile career.
It is.
So why have you stayed around for 25 years?
It's like,
come on, Dave. Why?
It's almost like I want to go that. You could take that last question several ways.
Yeah.
Why have you?
Yeah, well, we thought we'd get somebody new within these past 25 years.
The last I read, which was not that long ago, the average stay of a senior lead pastor is between 5 and 7 years. So we could have had at least 5 pastors in the past 25 years, right? I am so tempted to answer the question this way. I'm a little like Henry Ford's first car. It didn't have a reverse gear. It's one thing I've just noticed about me over time. It's like,
I thought you were going to say old and should be in a museum.
Well, oh no. Oh, that is painfully got a lot of truth in it. So,
JK.
Steve, I honestly, I'm going to be completely transparent. I am not always sure where the line between faithfulness and stubbornness is drawn. And sometimes, especially when things have been hard, it's been like, I will outlast you. I will just outlast you.
Yeah.
So do what you will. I'm not going anywhere. Real answer to that question would be One, it would be calling. There's a misunderstanding around the concept of calling. It gets used in ways that probably are not quite in line with what the Bible might teach, but God calls people to do things. There are some things he's called every Christian to do. So we all have the privilege, invitation / obligation to like reach people for Jesus, right? Show compassion on the world around us. Those are callings that we all have. But there are individual callings where God chooses to go to an individual and communicate to them in some way, this is what I want you to do. And it's specific. It's more specific. One, I was called into ministry, which I believe everybody in ministry ought to be there because they're called. But the calling doesn't look like the burning bush or the blinding light on the Damascus Road. If I understand calling right, according to 1 Timothy chapter 3, which I think is most insightful, what a calling is it's an internal burden, passion, yearning, desire, lust, because that's literally one of the words used in 1 Timothy 3, to do something that God put in your heart. It's desire, man. It's desire. I don't know why, I just want it. And God put this desire for ministry, vocational ministry, into my heart in my late high school years. But it took a while to refine. At first I thought, okay, if God wants me to serve him full time, I'm going to be a missionary with a machete in a jungle, clearing landing strips and building churches, schools, and hospitals, and then moving to some other jungle because the last thing God would ever ask me to do is speak in front of people. So that was it. And then that went from that to, oh, you know what? Maybe God wants me to speak in front of people. And God used my freshman speech teacher in college to open my eyes to that possibility. So then I was sure that it was going to be as a traveling evangelist, because if I could deliver 7 really fiery sermons and then move on, that suited my style. And then slowly it became, no, it's actually planting your feet somewhere and being a pastor. But more specifically, God has not only called me to vocational ministry, God has called me to be a pastor here. And so I'll briefly recount the story. I was pastoring outside of Madison, Wisconsin, and I knew that God was moving in my heart to do something different. We had gone through some tough times in that church, but we had worked through them and finally got to a place of health. So the church was in a good place, and that's when I began getting this inkling that God wanted me to move and do something else. Because I made a commitment before God that I would not leave when things were bad. I would only leave when things were good, because that's the only time I could be sure that God was actually calling me away, and it was not me just leaving because things were tough. And I was going to take a position with a church outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, that had just built this was 25 years ago, a $3+ million brand new building. They were a mega church. So they were running 1,000, 1,500 people, somewhere in there. And I was set to go. And a friend of mine from Wisconsin who had moved to Michigan called me up and asked if I was interested in maybe making a change. And I said, funny you should say that, because I actually am, but I kind of know where I'm going. And he said, could you come over here and just maybe speak for a Sunday, because I'm in this little startup church and we're not sure what to do. We just lost our first pastor. He's only here for a couple of years. And so as a favor to him, I came over to the Prairie Chapel And I spoke on Sunday, and then I met with people afterwards and answered a bunch of questions. And then we went to somebody's home, and a bunch of other people came over and I answered their questions. And I tried to serve them as best I could. And I'm driving home. I'm all by myself. And as I'm driving home, the Spirit of God went, that's where I want you to go. And honestly, it was like, yeah, no. It was like, that's like 75 people meeting in this really crappy rented facility, whose questions are, should we keep going or should we fold as a church? And God, this is like a church with lots of people and it's big and I'm going to have these great opportunities, or whatever the case may be. Well, by the time I got home to the Madison area, I just knew. It was like, God just downloaded in my heart and said, this is where I want you to go. And I've never been able to shake it. And it's that sense of calling that has done there's two ways that sense of calling has manifested itself, which is why I've stayed for 25 years. One is that calling has made me be utterly and completely committed to this church in this place. I look at it like a marriage, Steve. Better or worse, baby? Better or worse? And when I said I would come and be the pastor, and I did that and answered to God's call, it was like, better or worse? And I will not leave if things get hard any more than I would get divorced when things get hard in marriage. I'm all in with both feet. So there's been a commitment that is just a part of it. Steve, it's like, and I know you know this because I know you enough to know that you have the call, so you get this. It's like Jeremiah in chapter 20. He was discouraged because, quite frankly, he was being superimposed and having very little fruit for what he was trying to do in being faithful to God. And he finally says this. He goes, I had enough, and I determined I was not going to speak in God's name anymore. I'm done. This is over. And then he says this.
I think I've said that.
Yes. Yes. As almost everybody in ministry has. But here's what Jeremiah did. He said, but his word was like a fire that was burning in my bones. And I got so tired of trying to stifle it that I just stopped and kept preaching. I look at that and go, I get it. I could come up with along with the reasons why it would make total sense to go, I'm out of here. Except there's this thing that I can't walk away. That's God. It's just God going, this is your call, man. This is what you got to do. But there's another facet of calling that I think, but I really want people to get this, Steve. I think this is so critically important. As a part of a call to pastor a particular group of people, it comes with a love for those people that is truly God-given. I know for a fact that the Prairie Chapel / Connections Community Church could find many people who could teach better than me and lead better than me. Those are the two jobs of a pastor. So many people who are better teachers, so many people who are better leaders. But here's what you'll never find: somebody who loves you more. That's what makes a God-called pastor. It's looking at this flock and going, you're mine. Well, yeah, you're God's, but I'm his under shepherd and you are mine. And I have a love for you that compels me to be there and stick it out and to work through the stuff for you because you matter to me. And what you will never be able to find, I want every church to understand this. You will never find someone who loves you more than the pastor God is called to serve you. And that combination of commitment and love is the dominant reason why for 25 years I've just stayed here, because I am committed. I have planted my feet. Again, this is my mindset. Look, could God call me to do something else? He can do whatever he wants. And so, but I do know this, he's, for at least 25 years, it's like, this is the place. So I want to be like one of David's mighty men, which is a title that's given to particular warriors that were part of his army. And there was one of them who, it was said basically that they were fighting against the enemy. Everybody, all the other Israelites fled. But it said this guy planted his feet in the middle of a bean field and fought so hard until his hand cramped up and he couldn't even let go of the sword. And that day, God won a mighty victory. And Steve, this is my bean field. And I've planted my feet, and I might get cut down in this bean field, but I will die fighting. And unless God changes something, that's just what my attitude is. That's where I am.
Man, we so appreciate that too, knowing that you're committed and that you love the people here. Here's my follow-up question to this, because I think it's something that's maybe at the heart of this question too, is if you had to speculate, why is it so unique for a pastor to stay 25 years? Why do we see the statistics of 5 to 7 years? Is the calling of God different? Are people being disobedient to the calling? Like, why, if you had to speculate, why do we see these the statistics of senior pastors only being around for 5 to 7 years? Yeah,
great question. And I think the fair answer is all the above. Everything you just said, I think, is a part of it. This is my third church. I frankly went into the first two with the same attitude. In the first church, I was there for 13 years. In the second church, 12 years. In the second church, I was there about 3 years. In both cases, I went in like, this is where I'm planting my feet. In both churches, I changed dramatically. In both churches, we went through hard times, but it was working through hard times and being in good times where things are working right that God gave a new call. So I have no doubt that there are a good number of those people that are 5 to 7 year people. It's because God has called them somewhere else. God absolutely does that. What is also true, at least to the same degree, is that when the going gets hard, some people just leave. You know, Jesus said there's a difference between a shepherd and a hireling. The shepherd, the true shepherd, when the wolf and the bear come, it's going to be a fight to the death. And the hireling goes, not my sheep, I'm out of here. And they run. And unfortunately, there are people who are pastoring who are more of a hireling. They're more in it for what they're getting out of it rather than in it because God called them and they're there for the people. And when things get hard, they leave. Unfortunately, that is true for some people. It's also true, and you mentioned this, there are just people that are in ministry and they succumb to temptation and they fall and they're out. The majority of the people that are my age, that were a part of my peers that started ministry in the same window, the majority of them aren't doing this anymore. They got burned out or they failed in such a way that they're no longer in ministry. And I get it. I understand the temptations. I understand the drain. I have faced them all. So I'm not talking in a hollow, abstract way here. But there are some that are in that category. There are others, just like other professions, that they want to climb the ladder. They want to be, it's probably a good motive. I'm going to grant them a good motive, but there's the ladder. So you pastor a church of certain size, you prove yourself, you go on to a church of a bigger size, and then finally you get the really big church. And there are some that have gone that path, and I'm not even saying that's wrong. It may be that that's the path that God has for some people, and certainly proving yourself as a leader on one level before you lead at a bigger level is legit. That's a legit thing. I have always been more of the persuasion of I am not interested in taking over what somebody else built. I am interested in building something. There's more of a entrepreneurial pioneer spirit in me. I wonder what God might just create through me. I wonder what God might do through me. That just makes it more likely that I stick somewhere for a long time. So yeah, those are a bunch of random thoughts that I'm kind of throwing at the question that you asked me. Yeah.
No, that's good. That's good. Speaking of challenges, challenges come. We know that. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about them here in a second. Some of the ones that you face, but there's also really good things. Like it's peaks and valleys, right?
It's peaks and valleys.
So there's kind of three questions in this one question. What has been some of the highlights of your time at Connections? And what have been some of the hardest times, and how did you handle them?
Yeah.
How did you handle both of them? Because I think that's probably maybe the handle is maybe more directed to the hardest time, but how did you handle the highlights too?
That's a great way to look at it, because handling the highlights can be as tricky as handling the valley challenges. So let me try to address that whole thing. I would say that the highlights and hardships have come hand in hand. In other words, as I'm thinking back, you always get the one with the other. Was it Paul said as he's wrapping up the book of 1 Corinthians, and he goes, I'm going to stay here in Ephesus for a while, because there is a great door of opportunity before me, and there are many adversaries. And I remember reading that one day and going, yup, that's exactly how it works. Opportunity and opposition always come hand in hand, because there is an opposer who is always trying to stir up things to keep opportunities from being seized and fruit being born for Jesus, which means lives being saved and transformed. So highlights, one, and I know this is so big picture, but I'm looking back 25 years, has been one, it's been the people that I've worked with. I have had the unbelievable privilege of working with some of the best human beings on earth. I have had that opportunity. People who have loved God, loved the church, been faithful, been fruitful, impacted my life. There's like 5 people that had been on staff here at Connections, done a really great job, and gone on to serve in various other ministries in really big and impactful ways. Pastoring, leading nonprofits, other Christian ministries. And I look at them now and I'm like, man, you are doing amazing things. And I was so privileged to be able to work with you, and you've meant so much to my life. It was such a privilege and a blessing to work alongside and see them grow, and then what God is doing in their lives right now. It's just been amazing. This is the perfect opportunity to say that the staff that we have right now is like stellar. I look across the board. I'm talking about full-time people as well as part-time people that we have working. And I'm like, there has never been a bigger or better assembled team. There's just not like a weak spot. I mean, oh my goodness, it is just, I don't believe the people of Connections are able to fully comprehend the caliber of people that is pastoring them right now. They are amazing. And I have worked with a bunch, and I know a bunch and a bunch of other churches. This group is A+, people. And there have also been volunteers that I have worked with that have been faithful through all of the hardships that have come. There's a handful of people that have been here from the beginning, and another small handful of people that came earlier on that have been here for like a decade and a half. Gosh, I love those people. I mean, because they have been through it and they're still here. And there's a measure of respect I have for them that are like, oh my goodness, you are such amazing people. I can't imagine doing life in ministry without you guys in the picture. And it's also people that have been the biggest hardship. It has been people and relationships that I've worked with, whether it be volunteers or people on staff, that have also been the source of the greatest pain and disappointment. And I don't go into detail. I've never gone into detail. That's not even my point. But people will always bless you the most or hurt you the most.
Right.
And there have been some that have been excruciatingly painful to have to work through, that have really crushed my heart. So people, number one, highlight as well as hardship. The second thing I would that comes to my mind, just surfaces, boom, right away, is our faithful pursuit of our mission and our vision. And because it's all that North Star that led us to triple our staff and double our budget in 2003 and not build a building and decide we were going to be the people that God needed us to be for this generation. It was the willingness to go, we're going to move out of the upper elementary school and we're going to pay a lot more money to rent the high school because there are better facilities there. And so we're going to find a way to get it done so that we can do ministry better. It was going to 2 services for the very first time in the high school rather than 1, because we wanted to give more people options and opportunity to be able to come and hear the good news about Jesus. So we needed more volunteers doing more stuff, and people stepped up and got it done. It was buying the 20 acres right here that we sit on right now for a 20 acres prime spot, a lot of money. We changed the name of our church to better communicate to our community what we were really about. Because Connections just isn't our name, it's also our mission, connecting people to God and others in their God-given purpose for life. It was paying this land off. It was raising the funds to build this building, phase 1, phase 2. It was going from 2 services to 3 services and more taxing on volunteers. It's launching the initiative for phase 4 for the one that we're in right now. I look at step after step that were risky, that were costly, that demanded more of people, that were all in pursuit of a mission and a vision. And I could not be prouder of the dogged pursuit of this church over those things. That is so incredibly precious to me. It also gave birth to some of the hardest moments that there are. I call it vision wars. People on the other side would call it different, or maybe they call it vision wars, but the right side lost. I don't know what they might say, but because when it came time to like changing our name and buying the property and moving this direction, there was a real war that went on over what the future of our church would look like, and it surfaced a real dichotomy of values And value differences are huge. And it created a time period that church was so incredibly painful to be a part of and toxic in its spirit that it was like, I didn't want to go to church. I had to. It was so hard and so many things were happening, and you know how it goes. Rumors spread and things go around, and oh my goodness, it was just so difficult. And it was like a slow bleed for a while, and that was just so incredibly difficult. But again, just stay faithful. This maybe goes in the category of another way that I've changed, or maybe just another illustration of something I mentioned. I have this vision, Steve, of what could be. And you know, because you're a man of vision too, you see it with the clarity that I do. And then you see what is. And the tension between what is and what could be. And of course, our job is to help lead people into that preferable future that God has for us, right? And sometimes when it takes long times, it can be excruciating, and we can fail to rejoice over the good things. And I'm so guilty of that. Rejoice over the good things that are happening, because so many good things are, but that tension between what is and what could be. And then when things are falling apart and you're going the other direction, I mean, an ice pick in the temple is less painful, way less painful. But it's in that crucible that God becomes real. And God becomes so dominant, so central, so essential. Which is weird to say because he's always essential, but you feel it in those times. That you resign yourself into God in a way that says, I'm just going to be faithful, and you do whatever you want whenever you want. And I want this because I believe this is good. I believe it's right. I believe it's what you want. But I'm just going to resign myself. You see, this is an aggressive resigning. I'm going to resign myself to you, your time, and your plan, and I'm just going to stay faithful and let you do whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do it. I remember reading through Hebrews 11, which is the heroes of the faith chapter in the Bible, right? And all these guys and girls do this and raise the dead and conquer armies, and, just like, yeah, I want to be that guy. I want to be that girl. And then in verse 35-ish, right in the middle of the verse, it makes a change. And then it goes, and others. And there's two ways of expressing others in the Greek language, which the New Testament was written in. And one really refers to others that are of a different kind or variation, and then others that are of the same basic kind or variation. And this is the expression, others of the same kind, the same variation, same faith. And others were tortured, not accepting deliverance. They were put in logs and cut in two. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, tormented, and afflicted is the way the Bible describes it. And here's what hit me. They didn't have any different faith than David did. Any different faith than Moses did. No different faith than Abraham did. Their faith was the exact same faith. And our job is to live in faithfulness to God. And then build a church of 1,000 or kill me. your call. Because this is your church and you're doing your thing, and my job, my responsibility, my privilege in expressing my love for you, saving me, is to go, whatever you want. Whatever you want. And you resign yourself into that when things are really hard in a way that suddenly you're like at peace. And you're like, you get a little bit more like, not completely like, but a little bit more like Job when he goes, if he kills me, I'm still going to trust him. As like, in those moments you go, I kind of get that, because it is not about me. And it's not even about what I can do, what I can manufacture, what I can make happen. This is about God and his redemption and restoration of human beings. And I'm a really infinitesimally small part, but a part that matters, that is in the hand of God for him to do whatever he wants. And now I'm okay with that. That's okay with me. So in those hard times, that's some of the beauty that comes out of it. And Steve, you literally, and I mentioned this in a cursory way on Sunday when I was telling my story, oddly enough, more talking about me. You just get this sense of invincibility. And it's not like, I will never die, nothing will happen to me. Like, until God's done, you can't kill me. So I'm just going to keep doing this until God goes, okay, you're done. And then I'm done. And God does with me whatever he wants to have done with me. Stephen got chosen as one of the first deacons. And shortly after being chosen to be this great leader in this growing church, he gets put on the spot. He tells people the truth. There's an uproar. He preaches a message which cuts people to their heart. Some people get saved, but most of the mob decides they're going to execute him. And Stephen gets stoned to death and he dies. It's like, well, that was a short-lived career. But God used the death of Stephen to bring the conviction to Saul that caused Saul to get converted on the Damascus Road. And I have a funny feeling that Stephen is in heaven going, that's what you wanted to do? Oh, God, that's awesome. And I think anybody that stays faithful through the hard times, when they get to heaven and they're able to see what God is doing through what appeared to be, obscure injustice and hardship, I think every person will go, God, you're brilliant. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. That mattered so much. So I'm rabbit trailing right now, but when you get old and you just start trailing off into all sorts of different things. So mission and vision pursuit, I can get back eventually. That would be one. You know what else comes in my mind immediately? That's the last thing I'll share. I've been talking a long time. What this church has done with the messages of grace in Uganda. Because once again, it was a calling thing when I was there a decade ago. And I was on the last day there with a good friend of mine, Rich, and he's really the one that facilitated that whole trip. And Pastor Vana, who's kind of leads those churches and a couple of schools, goes, hey, we just started this school up in this little fishing village. You want to take the last day and go see it? And I'm like, okay. And here's this school. At the time, it was running like 400 to 500 kids. So I was really pretty big. Meeting literally in mud huts. Literally mud huts. Most of the kids were orphans. They were feeding them twice a day. They were providing some rudimentary medical care. They were discipling them. They were giving them a quality education. The faculty and staff, which was like 10 or 12 people at the time, were living by faith, no salary. It was just like somebody would give a chicken and so literally, I'm not lying. This is what they would do. And it was just, And so I went there and I see what's happening and I see the joy on their faces. And they, of course, feel the need to do this big presentation. And they did. And it was really awesome and cool. And I remember meeting with all of the staff and I asked the question, what would it take to support this school so you guys could actually get paid and, and all this kind of stuff. And they got this little notebook out and they put these numbers together. I still have that piece of paper. And it was like for some pathetically small amount, it was like, we could pay the staff of 12 and run a school of 500 for like $3,000 a month. Like, wow, we spend $5,000 a year for each student in America on our education, right? And so in that moment, I got a call from God, and that call went something like this: take care of this. And I'm like, God, I hope you don't mean me myself, but okay. And I came back and shared it, and this church they rose up and went, we're doing this. And now that the school is 1,200 people, now that there's a medical clinic that we purchased, built, moved, doubled, tripled the size, put on the campus of the school. It's got 4 or 5 full-time medical staff. Now the staff at the school is 20. There's 1,200 students. It's still education, Christian discipleship, feeding them 2 meals a day, medical care, plus the medical care of hundreds of people around the region every single day for free in the name of Jesus, the medical clinic. Every dime that school operates on comes from Connections Community Church. The pride I feel when I look at our people and go, look at what you are doing. That's way up there. We are having an impact there beyond what anybody in the church can comprehend right now, because the next generation of leaders in Uganda is being raised up in that school, and it's going to change the culture of that country.
Yeah.
So those things just right away come to mind as like, those are real highlights that I'm very blessed by.
Yeah. And I know our partnership with the ministry in Uganda has just grown over the course of the years. And it's one of the things I know we've talked about recently of how can we send a team of people there? We're looking at maybe within the next calendar year.
That's correct.
Of trying to get a team of people there. So if you're watching, you're interested, you've been moved by what is happening with the Messengers of Grace in Uganda, and you're interested at all at maybe finding a way to partner with them, or even looking forward to possibly even going there, reach out to us, fill out a Connect card. Let us know your thoughts, your prayers, your hopes, maybe that you're interested in missions, and we would love to get you more information and get you connected that way, and possibly get you on board for hopefully a trip within this next year.
Yeah, hopefully next summer. And man, I'm so glad you shared that. I mean, we're just wrapping up Global Impact Month, where we're raising funds to support our mission partners for a year. So any gift given to Global Impact Fund, Messengers of Grace, and also Fight Ministries, rescuing women and children from sex trafficking in the DR, huge.
Yep.
But also, we're always looking for people who have maybe a particular heart for missions, and for our strategic partners like Messengers of Grace and Fight Ministries, that can help us just in like correspondence and staying in touch with people and facilitating information flow, and maybe even helping organize trips. So if you're all interested, yes, let us know. Really important.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, Dave, thank you for sharing some of your thoughts and experiences and memories from the last 25 years. We are looking forward to seeing what God does with you in the future.
So am I.
Hopefully continuing to stay here in our area and here at Connections, impacting more people as we move forward and as we continue to follow that calling God has placed on us. So
indeed, I have some inklings of what the next chapter may look like. That's all I'll call for right now is inklings. But I tell you, there is no change in one regard, in that my heart is in this place and in this church and with these people. So however that fleshes itself out, it'll be, the adventure will continue.
It shall. It shall. Well, thank you for joining us this evening, and we will continue doing these Q&As with me and Dave, but we need more questions. I mean, we have a catalog.
Oh, we have a catalog, yes.
We have a whole bunch, but we want to continue to open up the opportunities for you to ask questions because we love getting them. We love going through them. If you have already submitted a question, you haven't seen it yet, don't worry. It is catalog. We're just trying to compile them into light questions so we can answer them all at a certain time.
Exactly. Which is why, I mean, when you ask a question now, and the question that you ask is like fresh, fits with like 2 or 3 other backlog questions, right away we go, okay, that's one we need to elevate and we need to hit. So keep asking away.
Yep. And you can do that by going to our website, my3c.org, click on Ask a Question, fill it out there. Once again, all the questions are anonymous. We don't know who asks them. We have no way of reaching back out to you individually. We will answer them here in our Q&A and continue to bring you what we believe is God's word, his spirit working through us, bringing us truth, his truth.
Yes.
Not our truth.
Not ours.
His truth, and giving you some insight into where we believe the Spirit of the Lord is leading us.
Amen.
All right. Well, Dave, let's wrap it up. Thank you for joining us. We want to let you know here at Connections we love you very much, but more importantly, God loves you, and we'll see you next time.